Arkadaşlar kanalıma hoş geldiniz. I always wanted to do this. Okay, now we continue with receptors. What are the receptors in cell signaling? The type of the receptor actually depends on the type of the signal. Because now, of course, as you know, all the cells are covered with the plasma membrane. And here the signal comes. The question is, will the signal be able to pass through the plasma membrane or not? Now, there are two possibilities. Either it can pass or cannot pass. And we know that if the molecule is small and hydrophobic, it can pass. And if the molecule is large and hydrophilic, if it's, for example, a peptide, a protein, if something larger, it will simply not be able to pass. So the localization of the receptor totally depends on that. So in the case of one, if the signal can pass through the membrane, the receptor is going to be here localized in the cytosol. Although it is localized in the cytosol, we call it nuclear receptor. Because the signal will be able to pass through the membrane and it will be able to come here and join the receptor. In the other case, if the signal cannot pass through the membrane, the receptor has to be localized on the membrane, plasma membrane. And then we call them surface receptors. Because if you're talking about something large, there is no way that it will be able to pass. So the molecule, the signal has to be received here and continue. Of course, there are two different things that are happening here. In the case of, for example, nuclear receptors, although it is located in the cytosol, it is called nuclear receptor because once it is received here in the cytosol, it will be transmitted to the nucleus. And if you were a molecule, what would you do in the nucleus? The answer is quite simple. You would interact with the DNA. So this guy is interacting with the DNA and it is changing the gene expression profile because it is behaving like a transcription factor, which is also better shown here. It's interacting with the DNA, it is interacting with some genes, and so it causes some genes to be expressed or unexpressed. The other one, when the signal is recognized on the surface, it is going to, of course, cause some changes here. And there's going to be a series of changes. So it's not only one kind of thing. And most possibly, as this signal diverges, there is going to be more and more and more molecule interacting. So this signal which is received on the surface, we say it is going to start a cascade. So although one single signal is received on the surface, in the cell it is going to interact several things because there is an interaction pathway. We also call these things molecular pathways or interaction pathways. And they're an important question in biology because if we can solve how the cells interact, how these pathways are regulated, it's going to be a good step in understanding cancer. And if you can understand the cancer, maybe you can defeat cancer. If you don't understand cancer and cell signaling, there is no way that you can defeat cancer. There is no magic recipe or something. Just people are making this up. So here there are some examples of the signals that can pass through the membrane. And these are all hormones. You know the estradiol and testosterone, these are the sex hormones, the cortisol, the healing hormone, and it can be called many other ways, the thyroid, which is regulating the metabolism. They are all quite hydrophobic, especially these three. They are made of cholesterol, and this is why they can easily pass through the membrane. Okay. else? Ah, yeah, the story of nitric oxide. Now, I'm going to tell you the story of nitric oxide. So this is a blood vessel. As you all know, we are controlling the blood vessels in different ways. A blood vessel can be small and can be large. Of course, when the blood vessel is small, less blood is going in there. When the blood vessel is large, no more blood is flowing, and you can control the blood vessel size, and this way you can control how much blood is going to go there and how fast it is going to travel. And this is specifically, of course, it is important for all the tissues in our body, but it's specifically important, or let's say pharmaceutical value, for two tissues. One is heart and the other is penis. Well, actually, the working mechanism is the same. This is why nitric oxide was used for both of them. In this case, for example, check the blood vessel. Once the signal comes here by the neurotransmitters, of course, the signal is brought here with a nerve terminal. So it's actually inducing the muscles directly. They're going to secrete the nitric oxide gas. So the important thing about this is that it's a gas, and like all gases, it can diffuse. So if it is expressed here, it is going to diffuse all around. So all the neighboring cells is going to be affected. So it's going to diffuse more. The nice thing is that it will not be able to diffuse too much, because nitric oxide is very reactive. So as it is traveling around, it is going to interact with the oxygen available in the environment, which is normally there. It is going to turn into nitrite and nitrate. And these are not signals. So because nitrite and nitrate cannot react, the effect of the nitric oxide gas is limited with its stable form. So as the distance that it can travel as nitric oxide without converted into nitrite and nitrate is the limit that it can affect. So it's not going to affect everywhere, it's not going to affect the entire body, it's going to affect a small region, few cells around it. And of course, not only this muscle is getting the signal, these muscle cells are getting signal. This is why they are affecting these cells inside. And at the end, before that. So there's a signaling that we are going to study this a lot. So as you know, GTP and ATP, these are the energy reserves in the cell. These are produced in the GTP is specifically produced in the Krebs cycle. ATP is produced all through the ETC plus glycolysis. They are carrying energy. Plus, they are the monomers for the RNA synthesis. Plus, they are the communication matters. So these two molecules are very useful. So during cell signaling, during cell communication, this GTP is modified, and cyclic GMP is produced. GTP has 3-phosphate, GMP has 1-phosphate. This molecule is straight, this molecule is cyclic. So, and this reaction is catalyzed by an enzyme called guanylyl cyclase. So, what nitric oxide does is that when nitric oxide is received by a cell, by such an endothelial cell, it is going to activate the guanylyl cyclase. So at the end, nitric oxide will create lots of cyclic GMP, and at the end, cyclic GMP will cause the blood vessel dilation. Okay, and here is the story. Of course, we know that nitroglycerin is an explosive. Normally, we don't use it for treatment. We use it to fight in the war. But at the beginning of the 20th century, people realized that nitroglycerin, this simple molecule, can also be used to treat for angina, which is actually a heart muscle problem. Because we know that the nitroglycerin is converted to nitric oxide in the cell, in the body. And when the nitric oxide is there, by the way, it's normally converted from arginine in a natural way, in a natural cell. but you can also supply nitroglycerin instead of arginine. So it can diffuse and create cyclic GMP from from GTP by the guanylyl cyclase, and it can cause this muscle movement. They're relaxed, so it affects the heart muscle, it treats the heart muscle problems. But they also realize that when people have this nitroglycerin, when they have high levels of nitric oxide, they're also having loss of erection. So this is the start point of Viagra, because they realize that it's not only affecting the heart muscles, the relaxation of the heart muscles, it also causes the blood vessels to dilate like this. So the blood vessels got bigger, and this is the cellular basis of erection. This is why these people are having too many erections. And anyway, for the last like 20-30 years, this mechanism is not mostly used for the heart problems. It is instead used for the erection problems, because Viagra makes the blood vessels dilate in the penis. It can cause more blood to flow through the tissue, and it can be used for the treatment of impotence. Okay, but all in all, the working mechanism is the same. Nitric oxide activating guanylyl cyclase, creating cyclic GMP. Say it's 10 minutes already. Maybe I will stop.